Moana Exiles, welcome to another Path of Exile 2 video. So I was browsing the Path of Exile 2 subreddit the other day, and fortunately there was an awesome post made there that was unfortunately downvoted into oblivion because it was bringing up a topic that the Path of Exile 2 subredditors did not want to discuss. But I think it's a very worthy topic of discussion, and it's one that just bleeds speculation because they were asking, what is left that is unknown about Path of Exile 2? Because maybe to a lot of bystanders who aren't in the conversation about Path of Exile 2, it seems like a lot has been revealed. After all, they talked about it in 2019. It's been in development since then. Well, it's actually been in development since 2017, but they've been talking about it since ExileCon 1. They had showcases in 2021, and then at ExileCon 2 in 2023, they had that big event, and they showed all these different acts and monsters and bosses. And over the course of the past year since then, they've had two events where they've invited out streamers, they've been at Gamescom, they've been at both PAXs, they've been doing a lot of different individual showcases. We should know everything there is to know about Path of Exile 2, right? Well, that's not actually true, and I plopped on in there because if there's a discussion that I think I can add to, I always do that, and said, hey man, my fellow exile, we actually don't know anything really about Path of Exile 2 besides the fundamental systems, and that's what makes it so much fun to talk about for many of us. We're all just, or not all of us, but many of you watching this channel, you're just excited about Path of Exile 2's release like I am. It's genuine bloody excitement. And we've been waiting for this since November 2019. And finally, 5 years later, on November 15th, 2024, it's happening. We're going to be able to play the game and experience it firsthand. And even though we know a lot about the fundamental systems of the game, everything else we don't really know about. So I thought it would be a little bit fun today, because I'm sure the next news drop is coming soon about how we're going to access early access. I thought we could just sit down and speculate about, well, not speculate, but lay out all the things that we don't know about. And I've actually been streaming over on Twitch and my second channel, Talkative Try Extras, going into detail in this speculation. We started with the leagues that I think will make Path of Exile 2's early access between the EA launch and 1.0. And starting tomorrow, Tuesday, we will be talking about what endgame systems I think will make it into Path of Exile 2. So in this video, we're just going to really lay out the stuff that hasn't been revealed yet and all the stuff that we're going to dive into on launch day, that first week, and beyond. So let's start with the first one that I listed out on Reddit, and that's Endgame. We know basically nothing about Endgame, and we will be learning more closer to the early access launch. Grinding Gear Games did say that. Probably November, maybe late October. We know that it's going to be based on Path of Exile 1's mapping because they struck gold there, and that many of Path of Exile 1's past leagues will play a part in the endgame. Now, what exactly does that mean? Will it just have something like the Atlas passive skill tree? Will it have Delve as an endgame mechanic? Will it have Heist? Will it have maybe the Forbidden Sanctum as a mechanic? We don't know any of that, and none of it has been revealed. Remember, all the showcases have been of the early acts, and they've been intentionally slowed down to showcase the pace of play to the broader public. We, of course, will be zooming through a lot of the time, right? Not zooming, but moving faster than how Grinding Gear Games showcases the play. The fastest we've seen is really the Ranger showcase, and it was something in either Act 4 or 5 that we were seeing. I think it was Act 5. But beyond that, we haven't seen Act 6. We haven't seen any endgame. So it's going to be very interesting what Grinding Gear Games decides to showcase to us before the game launches, because they have committed that we will see some endgame. Next up is the thing that everybody is looking forward to, and those are Ascendancy classes. In Path of Exile 1, that was one of the largest expansions to the game when they added 3 Ascendancy classes to every single class besides the Scion, who works very differently. In Path of Exile 2, there's going to be 3 for all 12 classes, but in early access, we're probably only going to have access to a subset of them at the very beginning. There's been no knowledge on those since that initial 2019 reveal, and since then, basically everything has probably changed. We saw the Beastmaster back then, the Tactician, one other Ranger one, and then a few other classes ascendancies. I don't think any of them have really made it to the present. In 2024, this year, I did have a press kit that had the Ascendancy names for 3 different Ascendancy classes that I brought up to Jonathan, but he refused to go into detail on any of them. They were the Shaman for the Druid, they were the Arcane Archer for the Ranger, and the Earth Shaker for the Warrior. Take what you will from those. Like I said, we're not doing speculation in this video. We're just laying out all the stuff that we're going to find out when the game actually hits. Next up is one of the things that Jonathan Rogers is most excited for, and I assume Hrishi and other GGG developers are too. And that's us finding all the uniques in the game. I think you can go over on PoE2DB and see that we know 5 to 7 different uniques in the game, and that's it. You know, they tried to commit to 700 plus unique items because there should be at least one unique item for every base type in the game. That's probably not going to happen on early access launch, but even at a fraction of that number, that's a huge amount of unique items. And a lot of the uniques from Path of Exile 1 will likely make it to Path of Exile 2 with different abilities. Like, we're not going to have a Mage Blood in Path of Exile 2, given the way that flasks work. Still, that's another aspect of the game alongside Ascendancy classes that will allow us to fully customize our characters and create wild builds. I, for one, are hoping there are uniques in the game that allow you to stay in bear form permanently, much like last Epoch and Diablo 4 have. I'm sure that there's going to be something like that, but we'll just have to see. Once again, we're left in the dark, and I think this is something, unlike Ascendancies and unlike Endgame, that we will not see anything about until we actually get our hands on the game on November 15th. And then we'll do a 2-4-1. That's the skill gems and support gems. I don't think we've seen most of them. We've seen a fraction of the total number in the showcases, in the trailers. We're going to discover most of them ourselves once we actually get our hands on the game. I don't think people realize that for the past 7 years, they've been developing these new skills for Path of Exile 2, and we've not seen the bulk of them, especially with support gems and the fact that we can only use one instance of each support gem across our entire build. I think we know they are pumping out support gems due to that, and we're going to be discovering a bunch of new wacky support gems because of that. Silver XYZ, Dreamcore, and I had a discussion about this in the 5th installment of the Still Sane podcast. So if you are blasting maps or playing another game or maybe going on a run, you can go ahead and listen to that whole podcast. Lots of really good discussions there. I'll make sure that the link is below or appearing on screen right now. Here's another big one, crafting. We know almost nothing about crafting. Since the initial reveal of Path of Exile 2 and then a little update in 2023, they've not talked about crafting in the slightest. There was a little bit of information about how they might split out the various crafting systems in various leagues based on weapon type, meaning, for example, you can only use Delve fossils on armor, and you can only use essences from essence on jewelry. Now, this is in no way confirmed. This was just a little bit of speculation that I thought I would throw out there. We also know that there are massive changes to the currency orbs. Some have been removed from the game entirely, like Orbs of Scouring, meaning resetting items is impossible now for the most part. And then Chaos Orbs act as an Exalted Orb and a Orb Annulment in one. You are adding a mod and removing a mod with a single click of a Chaos Orb. Then, of course, there's the crafting bench. Originally, it was supposed to be removed from Path of Exile 2 entirely, just like it is in Path of Exile 1's Ruthless version. But it appears, based on the latest information, some interviews from earlier in the year with Jonathan Rogers, that they decided to go back on this, and the crafting bench will be in Path of Exile 2 in an evolved form. Beyond that, we don't know anything about crafting. Here's another one to put in perspective: the 70 plus bosses and areas that we have not seen. Yes, we've only seen a few bosses in comparison to how many bosses there are actually in the game. And then there's a chance that they are reformatted or reformed in the end game of Path of Exile 2, meaning we haven't seen over 100 plus of the bosses and how they'll play out. Maybe in Path of Exile 2, bosses in endgame will be taking abilities from other bosses, they'll be in different boss arenas, they'll have unique modifiers, and more. That's wild to think about given the quality of the bosses that we've seen thus far. I don't know how many tour goals grinding your game has in them, but it's going to be very interesting to see once the game comes out. Remember, we're getting all 6 acts. This isn't heart of the game, like with last Epoch's release or with Path of Exile 1's release. We are getting the full game in early access on November 15th. It's just the end game that is likely to be a skeleton. It's just a lot of the leagues that are not likely to be in the game. Otherwise, we're getting it all. Areas, monsters, bosses. Whew, it's going to be wild. Here's yet another thing. Base types. Base types in Path of Exile 2 are rather different from Path of Exile 1. I would actually compare most of the base types in PoE2 to be like the heist base types, the experimental bases in Path of Exile 2, wherein the base types in PoE2 seem to give they give unique things, essentially. All of them give skills because weapons give skills. All the weapons give skills, right? They give the default attacks. Then one might give fire damage, another might chill enemies on hit. One might poison, it might have a much higher critical hit chance on chilled or frozen enemies, stuff like that. There's a lot of different base types in the game, and I don't think all of them are just going to have higher armor values or higher damage values. I think they're going to make the base type matter quite a bit in Path of Exile 2, given what we've seen already, and I can't wait to see the rest. In conclusion, we've basically not seen anything beyond the most fundamental systems of Path of Exile 2 and the early acts and some of the bosses from the later acts, just a subset in Act 4 and one from Act 5, I believe, maybe 2. That's wild. The fact that we're 8 weeks out, we're 53 days, and we've not seen most of the game, it's kind of crazy because of how open they are with their development, that if you lay it out like I just did in this video, we've not actually seen much. And that excites me massively, because the most exciting time to play Path of Exile 2, in my opinion, is going to be obviously on November 15th, but then it's going to be on 1.0, and then 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, because that's the magic of Path of Exile. Even though we're looking forward to the Path of Exile 2's release, we have to remember that in Path of Exile 1, for the past decade, they've managed to reignite the excitement of the vast majority of their player base and many new players, league after league, year after year. Settlers of Kalgur, in terms of raw player numbers, was the most successful Path of Exile league of all time, and the game's been having leagues officially since 2013 when it went into its full 1.0 release. That is staggering. And I think the same exact thing is going to happen for Path of Exile 2. And that just excites me beyond belief. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel, Talkative Try, for more Path of Exile 2 content leading up to release and beyond. I have booked PTO for that time. I am going to be cranking out the content, whether it's live, whether it's on this channel, whether it's long form, whether it's short form. I am really going all in on Path of Exile 2, as you have probably seen from my channel over the past year, and I'm really going to try to build something substantial with it. I think that it's possible. I think that with your help and with the help of Grinding Gear Games, who have given me those opportunities to fly out and play Path of Exile 2, to interview the game director, and just do everything that I've done, that we've done, that's really possible. But we're going to see if it happens in just 2 short months. November, December, they're going to be exciting times, my fellow exiles. Anyways, that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Talakura, my fellow exiles.